My own case differed in no important particular from those mentioned in medical books. Sometimes, without any apparent cause, I sank, little by little, into a condition of hemisyncope, or half swoon. And in this condition, without pain, without ability to stir, or, strictly speaking, to think, but with a dull, lethargic consciousness of life and of the presence of those who surrounded my bed, I remained until the crisis of the disease restored me, suddenly, to perfect sensation. Greetings, Poe fans, and welcome back to one of our degree episodes. And tonight we are going to be discussing, what is it, Jeanie?
Narcolepsy.
Yes, narcolepsy. All right,
Yes,
let's
we're
take a
gonna
nap.
go. Yeah, let's take a brief one. Woo! There we go.
That's right.
We're going into hemiswoon. We're going to hemiswoon.
Yes. That, that I just, whenever I think of that, I just think of, whoa.
No, yeah. Now, no, and remember, you got to fall forward, not backwards, because most people when they faint, they fall forward.
That is true.
It's very rare, and I've found out over the years, due to my wonderful years of having neurological issues,
Mm-hmm.
that 90% or above of normalcy of the brain, when a person faints, that pushes them forward. They fall forward. But
Okay.
it's very rare that you go backwards. And usually, if you fall backwards, that means you suffer from certain types of neurological issues.
Okay. That's interesting.
So,
That's a
yeah.
nice addition to our episode.
Yeah. So, narcolepsy, if somebody like just faints, then if they go forward, that's a good sign. They go back, you may want to think about
This is
it.
true.
Could be a sign of other things underlying.
All right. Well, to kind of start off, we just, thought about, talking about just the, not only the origins, but just what's the technical definition. And what I found was that it's a chronic neurological condition that affects the brain's sleep-wake cycle,
Hmm.
and it's called sleep attacks. There is sleep paralysis. There's
Yep.
cataplexy, which has sudden muscle weakness. And so I loved when Jeannie came on the Zoom tonight and saw her little diagram of the different parts of narcolepsy. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This fits perfectly.
Yeah, it's a good visual because
Hmm.
it's interesting that cataplexy, the episode of muscle weakness, is triggered mostly by emotions and usually laughter. And you know how sometimes people, uh, when they see, now I've heard of this, I actually haven't witnessed it before, but like people at funerals or things like death or something like that,
Hmm.
they'll start laughing.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a a trigger from their emotions that causes the laughter. So it's a type of cataplexy.
Oh, that is interesting.
Yeah, I mean it's a muscle weakness, and it's like that kind of thing.
Right.
So, or if you're just weird like me and you just have a dark humor, so
Well, this
but
is true. This is true.
yeah.
Well, and we'll get into this part later, but
Hmm.
what the fascination for me, I thought I knew, like I knew what it was, just the basic definition, just it has something to do with falling asleep. You almost look like you're possibly, you know, not with us anymore.
Yeah.
To the extreme part of it, but the levels of it and the different parts of it, I did not know all of the wherewithals of those, and so that it was very cool to research this topic. But the ties to horror is what really fascinated me once I dug a little deeper. But I don't want to talk about that yet because we want to talk about kind of where it started and things like that. And, and
Hmm.
then we'll connect Poe a little later.
Oh yeah, because Poe is, Poe has got a string tied to him when it comes to this. So
Oh yeah, and it's dangling in all just about all the levels of it too, which is
absolutely.
and so very very fascinating. Well, Jeannie, do you want to take it away with a little bit of the history?
Sure. And well, the history, we don't want to go too much into the etymology of the actual words because like you said, you want to discuss a little bit more of that later.
Hmm.
So, the actual history of narcolepsy itself, without talking about the word narcolepsy,
Yeah.
it was first written account of a disorder that fit this description of narcoleptic syndrome was found around the 1600s. Because remember,
Hmm.
the term narcolepsy wasn't coined until much later in like the 1800s,
Yes.
but there
Yeah.
was written documentation of similarities of maladies from different places around the world that fit with the narcoleptic syndrome.
Hmm.
Now, Thomas Willis, who's often known as the founder of neuroanatomy, described these symptoms in one of his patients.
Okay.
So that's kind of where we can date back to when the it was narcoleptic
Narcoleptic, is that what you're going for?
symptom. Yeah.
Yes.
I was trying to make sure I used the correct verbiage as an
Yes.
adjective, the
Yes.
narcoleptic symptoms.
I know.
So, but yeah. So, but in 1877 and 1880, Jean-Baptiste Edouard Gelineau and German physicians Carl Friedrich Otto Westphal and Franz Fischer
Hmm.
documented the first official case reports of narcolepsy.
Yes. And
And those early symptoms are very said to be usually, but not exclusively, present in only children, adolescents, and young adults.
oh, that is interesting. And I think Jeleno coined the phrase narcolepsy. Like he was the one responsible for that, is what I found.
Yeah, he probably was. I mean, that's like I said, that's under the etymology that we didn't want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jean-Baptiste Eduardo Gelano, he was the one who came up with the root word,
Hmm.
uh, because it is from a French word,
Yes.
which
Yes.
had which I thought was very interesting because French is a Latin Romantic language, but
Mhm.
the word narcolepsy is more from a Greek words. So,
Right. Yeah. It's
but
yeah.
we'll get to that in a minute. Um, but research had suggested that more than half of people that live with narcolepsy developed the condition before they turned 18.
Oh,
So that kind of makes sense
yeah.
because most neurological disorders happen throughout mature times of life, like puberty,
Yeah.
other developments, ways that people change as you grow older.
Hmm.
So that would fit with it. So
Yeah.
but it wasn't until around the early 20th century when they started looking at a scientific understanding for narcolepsy with cataplexy based in psychiatry and psychoanalysis.
Hmm.
And especially Stanford University School of Medicine, Department of Psychiatry, Behavioral Sciences, and we all know that early 20th, yeah, that's right, 20th century, right? That would be 1900s.
Yes.
Early 20th century is when we got Freud, we had
Young.
Jung,
Yeah.
we had Carl Jung, B.F. Skinner with his behavior analysis. We had
Mhm.
all these different psychiatry types starting to do all their experiments and coming up with all these different ideas. So this
And
actually
about
fits
dreams
perfectly.
and all that too.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
the study of dreams, especially, the id, the ego, and the superego. And
Hmm.
so it fits
Absolutely.
very good within these areas and that time frame.
It does. And one thing I do want to add, and I know you had found some things on art, but just with the
Mhm.
timeline, back in 1781, there was a famous representation of when from the 1664 first clinical description of narcolepsy, even though it wasn't called that then, but it was,
Mm-hmm.
known as sleep paralysis. When they talk about the sleep paralysis, and we'll get into this later, but the Dutch physician that basically kind of talked about this, he referred to it as an incubus or nightmare.
Yeah.
And the painting that was done, it was a perfect representation of this, was done by Henry Fuseli in 1781, and it was titled The Nightmare. And the description of the painting, what, and I think I've seen like a picture, online before of this painting, but it's a young woman who has swooned all like across her bed, and the
Mm-hmm.
incubus is squatting on her stomach, basically staring at the viewer. So whoever is looking at the painting, that incubus that's like paralyzing her by sitting on her is staring at you, the viewer, which is really creepy.
That is creepy, but kind of cool
Fitting.
in its own right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just wanted to throw that in there with the timeline before I forgot about that, because I thought that was a very interesting tidbit.
Yeah, and actually, if you think about it, if it, narcolepsy and cataplexy and all that kind of has its roots in demonology
Mm-hmm.
because people that would just fall asleep and you couldn't wake them up and all
Mm-hmm.
this kind of stuff, it could be interpreted as being overcome by demons, being sucked into the other realm, that
Right.
kind of thing.
And
So,
the incubus and even the succubus comes from this too.
yes. So, and they are considered in uh history as part of the demon world or realm,
Mm-hmm.
even though demonology, actually, the study of demons, is such a vast, they put a lot of different things under the umbrella of the demons back in the day. So,
Oh, absolutely. And I was going to say, tying to that, I thought it was very fascinating that in folklore, the phenomenon of sleep paralysis was
mhm.
known as the old hag.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of makes sense too, because if you look at it from kind of a Wiccan point of view,
Mm-hmm.
you had the three different maidens. You have the three different versions. You have the maiden, the, what is it? The maiden, the maid, and the old hag.
Yeah, I think that's
And
right.
this, if
Yeah.
I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So, uh, putting a curse on you. Like the
Mm-hmm.
old hag could be putting a curse on you.
Yeah. You're
And
also making me think of the fates too, with the three.
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, and all this is kind of a tie together.
Mm-hmm.
And sleep paralysis, of course, is a very scary thing. And
Yes.
it feels like someone's sitting on you, holding you down, kind of like what you were describing with that picture of where the incubus is sitting on her chest and everything.
Yeah.
So you just never know what can be embedded in your memories or where you've learned things or heard things. But it's
Mm-hmm.
like sometimes it just makes perfect sense. You're like, huh, so that's where that come from.
Exactly. Well, and I think about how many times I've had a nightmare. And,
Mm-hmm.
I can honestly say I do remember like waking up feeling like something was like on my chest. But
Mm-hmm.
the more so than that, with this kind of feeling of that sleep paralysis, it's that you can't cry out. It's like you feel like you're trying to scream help or something of that nature, but your voice is not coming out, even though you feel like your mouth is opening. And it's just that horrible terror that you're feeling of whatever you're dreaming about. It could be
Yeah,
anything,
you're
any kind of nightmare.
catatonic
Yeah.
because and this goes back that it's a neurological disease because your
Hmm.
brain, so much of the brain has not been mapped out that neurologists have no idea about maybe 50% of what the brain can accomplish.
Right. Yeah.
So, but we do know that the brain actually can protect you
Hmm.
by like giving you retrograde amnesia if you are under an extreme emotional trauma
Hmm.
and stuff like that as part of protection. So, sleep paralysis could be attributed to that.
Yeah. Very true. And
And
it all,
go ahead.
I was going to say, I also think about, just that, you're with the narcolepsy and the cataplexy, the sleep paralysis, all of it combined. I can see how possibly, before it was really recognized in the late 1800s, that before that, you could see how some people might think somebody was dead when they weren't. They were just asleep.
Mhm. Yeah. And another thing also, if you've ever heard the term scared to death,
Mm-hmm.
that could be, the body reacting in a catatonic or narcoleptic state or cataplexy or something like that to
Yeah.
where and the body just shuts down.
Yeah.
So it is just amazing all the different neurological things that can take place in just the smallest things.
Yeah.
Now, narcolepsy, of course, was originally believed to be genetic. It was something that
Yes.
was passed down through families because they actually tagged it as schizophrenia.
Mm-hmm.
They first said that if you were narcoleptic, then you had to be schizophrenic.
Yeah.
Because they found that later on they researched it and identified it as being a genetic disorder. But in 1973, this is really interesting because I thought, what in the world? Scientists got an opportunity to study the theory of it being a genetic disorder when they discovered the first narcoleptic dog.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I'm like, it must have been a basset hound.
Oh, that's very interesting.
They just poof, it's like, and I think mostly it's just they don't have a lot of energy. They just don't want to do anything anyway. Uh,
Ah.
so they actually, Stanford University did genetically transmitted narcolepsy in dogs. They did a study where they transmitted it genetically from that one narcoleptic dog into other puppies so they could study them. And
Okay.
I'm like, and that's when they determined that the genetic transmission of narcolepsy was inherited through a single autosomal recessive pattern, but
Mhm.
only in some cases. An autosomal recessive means that two copies of the defective gene must be passed on to a child for the disease to develop. So basically, both the mother and the father would have to carry the gene, and it had to be both passed from them both into the child.
And you wonder what especially like I'm sure they have more statistics on that now. You wonder how many people both have that gene and have passed it on to their children.
Exactly. So it's just like any of the others. With genetics, you never know. It's like, okay, dokie. Wow, I didn't know that you could parse that on. And that's why I had a friend, her brother was born with muscular dystrophy.
Hmm.
And so when she got married, she told her husband that she did not want to get pregnant, that
Hmm.
they could adopt, but she did not want to get pregnant because she was afraid to pass on the gene.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's one of those things. Even though she probably was a carrier,
Hmm.
uh, this was like back in the 90s, so we didn't have a lot of the genotype testing we do now.
Right. Oh,
We
yeah.
could identify. what
Hmm.
genes carry what recessive or uh, dominant or all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
it was just very interesting that, yes, it is, is genetic, but it doesn't tie in with schizophrenia. It is a genetic disorder, but it's not tied specifically to schizophrenia.
Okay. And I think, weren't you telling me that originally they thought it could be tied to it?
Yes. Yeah. Originally, when they first, around the 1800s, because it was developing at such young ages,
Hmm.
they tied it to schizophrenia
Okay.
because they found that most people that had narcolepsy had also symptoms of schizophrenia.
Okay.
Now you have to remember this was like late 1800s, back when they first started pinpointing and
Yes.
identifying all these weird things and all that,
Yeah. I mean,
it's
because
kind of
when
like the
you,
whole thing. You took a handful of mashed potatoes, you throw it at a wall, and if it sticks, oh, then it's, something's wrong with it.
right. Well, and yeah, well, don't do pasta because pasta will stick on the wall if it's done.
Exactly.
But anyway, yeah, just pasta in general. We're laughing because there's a
Yes.
little joke about that
Yeah.
from earlier. But anyway,
From earlier, yeah, the
yes.
crock pot explosion.
Oh, but anyway, oh, what was I going to say? I actually forgot what I was going to say.
Well, we were discussing schizophrenia and
Yes,
genetic
yes,
disorders with cataplexy and
yeah.
ne ne
Oh, I
I
know what I was.
started to say necromancing, and I was like, nope, that's the wrong thing.
That's a whole different thing. But well, and thinking about it, like doing the DNA profiles, to find out your family history. They've, for a while now, well, probably at least a year or two, they've been,
Mhm.
sending emails of updates of traits that you have, genetically.
Yes,
And I don't remember any kind of sleep type of characteristic that I've been sent or looked at my profile. I haven't looked at it in a while. And I'm wondering if that'll be something that they eventually send out.
probably. I mean, because you have these genetic testings you can do. I
Hmm.
know that I get these advertisements for one, it's called sequencing. It's
Okay.
where they do the genetic testing and they actually sequence your chromosomes to see what genes that may carry different things, especially like autism,
Mhm.
cancers, all this kind of stuff
Yeah.
that you could be, what's the word?
Prone.
Yeah, prone to developing. Now, we also have to understand, and this is one of the things, that just because your genetic makeup may have a gene
Hmm.
that identifies as part of that type of sequence that goes to a certain disease doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to develop it.
Right. It's just you have a possibility of it
Yeah,
being
it's kind of
dominant.
like when you're baking a cake or something. You have to have all the right ingredients together to get to develop the cake.
Hmm.
So, like with genes and all the other kind of stuff, you have to have a lot of the same things that go together to make it a whole.
Right. Yes.
So,
Oh, yeah.
and a lot of the stuff that they've found in the past years, the diseases that they had determined were genetic, they're now finding they're technically not genetic diseases.
Oh, that is interesting.
So, but yeah, the etymology of the word narcolepsy is pretty interesting. Like I said earlier, it's got French roots, but those French roots are laden in Greek root.
Yeah, it really is. And it really and truly, when you also think about just how the different areas of narcolepsy are really a focus in Gothic literature and
Hmm.
fairy tales and fables and things like more, probably more fairy tales than fables. Because when you think about sleeping. And, just not that Sleeping Beauty, Aurora, was narcoleptic, but when you
Yeah.
think about it, what drove that, especially with the whole idea of the nightmare and being entrenched in some folklore and where some of these tales came from.
Exactly. I mean, they all kind of meander their way back to like what they used to call the sleeping death,
Mm-hmm.
which is one of the things that the fairy tale of Hans Christian Andersen jumped on the bandwagon when he created Sleeping Beauty and Snow White and all the
Exactly.
ones that, you had to kiss to awaken your true love.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all based on the sleeping death,
Yeah.
which that's where premature burials came in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they tied in, especially during the Black Plague, when people, their body pretty much shut down in narcoleptic or cataplexic or even a catatonic state to the point to where they would wait for 3 days to see if they would come back from it. And then after that 3 days, they would bury them, but then they still tied a string around their hand and strung it up through the ground and attached it to the bell in
Mm-hmm.
the graveyard. And then they would sit vigil for a few days to listen for the bell. And if the bell went off, they're like, whoop, they're awake, so they weren't dead. So we better dig them back up or they will die, you know.
Mm.
So, I mean, catatonics and not, cataplexy and narcolepsy and you just got all this kind of stuff. And then if you look at South America, they actually have a particular poison, I guess you could call it,
Yeah.
curare, to where you can uh, put that into someone's blood system and it paralyzes everything.
Yeah.
Even though they're still alive, it's
Mm-hmm.
another form of the sleeping death.
Yeah.
So
Well,
you got to know that Poe jumped on this bandwagon and went, woo!
yeah, because
Sorry.
as we're going to talk about here in just a moment, how many stories tie into some aspect of narcolepsy before it was
Hmm.
ever even thought of as a diagnosis for someone.
Yeah.
One thing I was going to say too, just picking up like the folklore and Victorian literature, in 1833, and Poe was writing then. Nikolai Gogol, who was a Russian author, wrote a short story called The Portrait. And it has like detailed descriptions of, motor paralysis. So it's got the sleeping paralysis, hallucinations, and just the cataplexy and things.
Hmm.
And so, just here's a description of what it's about. Basically, he's young, he doesn't have a lot of money, he's an artist. He finds this portrait that seems very lifelike. He wants to buy it, feels like drawn to it, and basically, the painting has magical powers, kind of offers him a conundrum, and he can either struggle to work his way through being an artist, or basically gain riches and fame and all of that. And so he chooses the famous pathway. And then when he comes to the portrait that's from another artist, it's very beautiful, and it's basically a pure bride. And then he realizes that he made the wrong choice. He becomes very ill, and then he dies from a fever. And those aspects of narcolepsy are embedded in this story. But then when I think about this too, this seems very much, wild-esque with Dorian Gray, and even not so much the oval portrait, but a little bit, just, with the whole painting aspect of it. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, and it makes perfect sense that pictures weren't really photographed until about late 1700s and then even into the 1800s. So sitting for long periods of time and getting your portrait painted
Right.
what could be in itself considered a type of narcolepsy
Mm-hmm.
because you can't move, you can't change expressions, you can't do anything. So your body pretty much has to shut down
Oh
for
yeah.
long periods of time.
Mm-hmm.
And then when pictures came around, which that leads me back into the 1800s, and we were talking about the death of young children, which they thought narcolepsy was mostly in children, young adults, and teens,
Yeah.
mostly. Uh, when your child died, or anybody in your family died, they would dress them up, put makeup on them, and have portraits taken, like
Yes.
pictures taken in the
Yes.
family. So, I mean, like, that's creepy because it's like they're dead. Can you imagine what they would smell like, considering, embalming wasn't a big thing back then? Because during one of our episodes when we were talking about funeral practices,
Oh yes.
if you haven't watched that one, you need to go back and do that one because that's woo right up the weirdness avenue.
Oh
Uh,
yes. Yes. That was just a little earlier this year. We have a big focus on with the science and the premature burial this year.
mhm. Yeah, so it is kind of ironic, but
Yeah.
at the same time makes perfect sense that Poe would use that culture that was happening in his stories
Yeah.
to make them even more psychological. Because we've talked about this before. One of the one things I love the most about Poe's stories isn't just the horror itself, it's the psychological horror, the
Absolutely.
messing with the mind and no one has if you don't have claustrophobia or anything like that, that's good. I don't specifically. I have a type of claustrophobia. It has to do with being in crowds of people. I could sit in a closet with the door shut all day and the lights out and be happy as a clam, you
Hmm.
know. Um, but yeah, if the thought of being buried alive or waking up and being trapped,
Yeah.
that in itself is a Poe classic. And what better way to do that is if you have, find somebody just randomly that, oh, look, they might be catatonic, they might just have fallen asleep and narcoleptic, or they could be dead. So one eeny, meeny, miny, mo. It's like we're playing eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
That is very true.
Yeah. It's like, oh, well, we chose wrong. Better dig them up. Can you imagine all those? I wonder, this just popped into my head.
Uh-oh.
Wonder if Poe got the inspiration for writing the bells from being near a cemetery
Well,
and hearing the
it was
bells.
actually from a church.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying, you know, it may not just been the bell of the church going off. It could have been bells from the graveyard in the church. You know, yeah, I mean, think about it. Can you
Oh,
imagine he could have been walking home one day and he thought he heard the church bell saying, signaling it's 6 p.m. or, or whatever. And all of a sudden he's hearing all these other bells following it going, huh,
well,
wonder what type of life's happening there. Oh, that's right. That's the life after death. That's because each one of his stanzas in the poem Bells is a different part of life.
this is true. Well, the church that Poe gained that inspiration for the bells was Fordham University Church's bells. Then it was known as St. John's College. I knew it was St. John's. I just had to think about it. And so I wonder if St. John's College had a graveyard.
Yeah. Well, I think I could be
It's just kind of
mistaken, but
funny
I
with
think,
that you say that.
yeah, majority of, and actually, there wasn't, uh, sh uh, was it Shannon, the one that wrote the book about
Sharon, Pica.
yeah, Pica.
Yes.
Thank
Uh-huh.
you. I couldn't remember if it's Shannon or Sharon. Didn't she do most of her research at the St. John's Cemetery?
Uh, I
Yeah, and I
think
think
it was
she did.
it's the one in Richmond. It's
Oh,
the
okay.
cemetery in Richmond, which think
I thought it was called St. John's
I
too,
think
so
it
that's
may
why I
be,
was.
but I just looked it up, and St. John's College, now Fordham University, but it was in Fordham, New York, because that's where he lived,
Yeah.
did have a graveyard.
See, there you go.
You're on to something, Jeannie.
I'm telling you, it would kind of just would make sense that Poe, being the writer that he was and having that imagination, hearing bells of people accidentally getting buried alive due to having either narcolepsy or being in some kind of catatonic state.
Yes. So, yes. So, Poe's mother, Eliza, was buried in St. John's Episcopal Church
Oh,
graveyard in Richmond, Virginia, and I have been to her grave. It's a
okay.
beautiful graveyard.
Yeah. I remember seeing the pictures that Sharon had in the book
Oh
and
yeah,
seeing the ones online and stuff.
in
So,
that book, if listeners and viewers out there have not read it, is called
but I mean, think about it also because it wasn't during when he was in his New York around that area, wasn't that the times of when Virginia was battling tuberculosis the worst and before she died? And
yeah.
so,
Well, they moved there to help her,
yeah, but
get
then she ended
over
up
that.
dying there. So,
Yes. So she wrote The Souls Close to Edgar Allan Poe.
exactly.
I had
There
a
you go.
little picture and I had to find a bigger picture so I could read the title. Yeah, excellent. What's really cool is that you can take that and go to the cemeteries that she and graveyards that she went to for her research for the book, and like go to the plots and then read about the person there. It's and the connection to Poe. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's like a cemetery scavenger hunt.
Yeah, yeah,
I love that. I mean,
absolutely.
well, that's that morbid person in me. No, so that's all right.
Yes. So, all right. So let's tie all this to Poe. We've kind of, obviously talked about the
Mhm.
whole premature burial, and just that was a huge theme of the Victorian times, Gothic literature, and
Yep.
just everyday life. And, Poe even had a fear of being buried alive. And I think that was a huge focus for him. And so many of the stories that he wrote about contain elements related to narcolepsy. You've got, just the whole part of premature burial fears. You've got that in the premature burial, that the title says it all. And
Oh
then
yeah.
you've also got Berenice, and a lot of it has the catalepsy take on the person that is thought to be like dead in a trance of some sort, but it's really that cataleptic state. Go on.
And if you could actually, if you think about it, with Poe being obsessed with death, which he had every right to be,
Mm-hmm.
because if you are at that such young age and touched by death, which I was. I mean, I still remember one of my very first memories. I was 3 years old at my grandfather's funeral.
Mm-hmm.
So he was 2 years old when his mom died. So the idea of death had already been ingrained in his early years to develop his personality.
Absolutely.
But if you think about the telltale heart, the unnamed narrator could very well fit with cataplexy because, these muscle weakness and these bouts of laughter and
Mm-hmm.
emotions that trigger the response of, I mean,
Hallucinations.
yeah, the
Mm-hmm.
hallucinations and all that kind of stuff about where the him or her, whichever one it would be,
Mm-hmm.
uh, watching and just feeling extremely weak when he saw the eye looking at him. I
Mm-hmm.
mean that could be a definition. So
Oh
there
yeah.
you go. We could add the telltale heart to that one too. So
That's true. And then you also have just poems that he wrote. The
mhm.
Raven, A Dream Within a Dream. You've got
There's
those
a dead belly
dreamlike,
in there.
yeah, dreamlike states. You've got the hallucinations,
Hmm.
and kind of like I think I mentioned earlier, or I may be confusing myself because Jeannie and I were talking about this before we
Yeah,
started
started recording.
recording, but part of that hallucination or that sleep paralysis is where you're in a REM sleep and you're dreaming, but you're partially conscious. And
Hmm.
so, this all is going on. And so when I was reading about this part of narcolepsy, I was thinking the person that came to mind, Salvador Dali, with all of
Hmm.
his, the dreams and things that, he painted and just his art. I think about the movie Spellbound by Alfred Hitchcock, where Dolly, and we've talked about this in another episode about Dolly in another
Hmm.
season. But you've got that dream within a dream. It's like, what is reality? What is the dream? And he had that dreamscape within the movie Spellbound. And so that's what came to mind when I was reading about that.
Oh yes, and I mean, and if you think about it, think of the cask of Amontillado,
Mm-hmm.
putting, being walled in and then having all these strong emotions and have this reaction and just going limp against that and just crying out in fear and all that. So in a way, Poe had Hitting the Pendulum, of course, is one of the best ones
Mm-hmm.
about uh, the thought of death
Yeah.
and it triggering those reactions of where you float away from the inevitable of reality
Mm-hmm.
into a dreamlike state to try to escape.
Right. Yes.
So, and that's one of the things that Poe was so phenomenally good at.
Hmm.
So it's like so many things. And it's like with phrenology, we've discussed phrenology in another episode and everything, and it's a debunked science, but it started out as an idea in the early days of medical, you know, experimentation, I guess is what we can call it,
Yeah.
to explain the weirds and the unusuals of things that happened and how they happened. So
Hmm.
I,
Absolutely.
I
Uh,
think that attributed so much to Poe's success posthumously
mhm.
because he was living in a time of great awakening, the come together of spiritual and uh, scientific,
Hmm.
and just led him on a string of ideas that he could just play with and create it, and then later it turned into something medical. And
Right.
he's like, unfortunately, he never actually got to see it in reality, but
Right.
contributing a lot of stuff to it and didn't even know it.
Oh yeah. Well, and like other stories that this parts of the narcolepsy appear are the fall of the House of Usher, with
Mhm.
Madeline being in a cataleptic state, the sleep paralysis. It's like, is she or isn't she? And she was
Yep.
buried alive. And then the oblong box as well. And then
Mhm.
one that I didn't even think about this until I was reading about it, and I've read this novel twice now. His only novel, the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket. And
Mhm.
while Pym is hiding out, he goes into this sleep, and he has that kind of sleep paralysis where he feels like there's a creature on his chest, and we find out later what it actually is, but he's not sure if he's awake or if he's in sleep. And so I really I hadn't even thought about that one until reading about it, just some of the elements of that, pulling it out.
Yeah. And,
So
and
it,
that's one of the things I love about it is when we're doing this research and stuff, it makes us go, oh,
yeah,
I didn't think of that.
yeah. And then Jeannie, you mentioned, the Poe's unreliable narrators.
Mhm.
It's like some of them do seem like they're tired or exhausted or maybe insomniacs. And that's why, like as in the Telltale Heart, the unreliable narrator, the caretaker, is acting the way they are. Are they suffering from exhaustion? I mean, he's staying awake, staring and watching and observing this old man and the pale blue eye. Is he acting this way because he can't sleep?
Are you there?
Yeah, I was like, what
Okay.
happened?
I don't know. I was like, everything went blank all of a sudden.
No,
That's weird. Maybe I had a bout of narcolepsy
I
there for a
think
minute.
you
Who knows?
did.
Good Lord.
Oh,
It was
yeah,
a talk induced narcolepsy. Okay.
yes. So, yeah, I mean, what was he having the hallucinations because of insomnia, which is a sleep disorder?
Hmm.
It just, yeah, it's
Yeah,
incredible.
it would be so great if we could be a fly on the wall and have a time machine and go back and do all these observations to about Poe in real life to watch him and
Mhm.
see
Yeah,
what happened daily,
yeah,
to trigger some of these reactions and these stories. So,
exactly. Well, and here's something else to think about. Did Poe have any of these types of symptoms ever?
mhm. I
It's,
mean, that would be the
he
question.
much of what he wrote, it was from, you write what you know. That's kind of Poe. Yes, I rhymed. I did it time.
Hmm.
Sorry, I can't.
Way to go. Okay.
Um, yeah, you kind of wonder, did he witness Virginia having these types of sleeping ailments?
Hmm.
Did he suffer from this? You really kind of wonder.
Yeah, and it's just one of those other mysteries that could this have led to part of his mystery of death?
Hmm. Absolutely.
Um,
Tied in with all the death in his life. Yeah.
exactly.
Hmm.
It just it amazes me that even though he has such similarities across all his works, whether it's short story or poems or anything else, there is such a line, like a fate line that ties each one together because
Hmm.
they all have something that is so poetic
Yeah.
that you just like, oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Whether it be him talking about death, about premature burials, about just the human nature of revenge. Or
Hmm.
best thing I love, he loved writing passive aggressive, even though he probably didn't know what passive aggressive was back then.
He probably did because I always say he was a time traveler.
Exactly. And we don't truly know, so
Exactly. Exactly.
but
But yeah, this was a neat topic I feel like it's kind of the part two to our episode from earlier this season when we talked about funeral practices and premature
exactly.
burial and things.
Yeah, because these are so integral to Poe and his writings and his thought processes if we want to go that far into it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, it's once more, it's we have that fine line like with our 6 degrees that tug on each other that tie everything together.
Absolutely. There's so many strings interconnected that it's just
Hmm.
not it's just unreal.
Yep. I mean, we could even call it the strings of faith if we want to look at it from that aspect of it.
Absolutely. And the episode that we're referring to was back on October 8th, and it's called The Morning of Poe.
Yes.
Not a sunny morning, Morning, but the morning we mourn you, Poe.
Yes. We mourn you. Mourn thy passing of thy Poe.
Yes. Well, Jeannie, I think we've kind of talked it all out.
Yeah, we put it to sleep.
Yes. But I'm not hallucinating yet.
No, I think I was a little earlier, but you never know.
I think you
Uh,
were.
I think I put my own self-induced narcolepsy there. Uh,
Exactly. Exactly.
so with that, I think we
We
are
are. Oh,
Poe,
ouch.
arousing from the most profound of slumbers. We break the gossamer web of some dream, yet in a second afterward, so frail may that web have been, we remember not that we have dreamed.